你是某某平台的 IB 吗？
我常常听身边的顾客朋友说，做 IB 的都是很轻松的工作，不是去打 golf， 就是去和客户喝茶，就能赚到可高达5位数的收入了。
我只想说，你只看到了一部分的事实。我认识的一些 IB， 他们的平台都没有提供很多的 support 给他们的自家 IB， 有时被客户问到 signal 或市场分析，他们还要去其他平台买 signal 提供给客户。
而我能够把我 IB 的业绩一直保持并持续成长，选择一个能帮助你发挥的平台，绝对是最重要的决定。毕竟选择比努力重要。在 VC Forex Capital， 你和你的客户可以交易到的产品有外汇、贵金属如黄金、原油、虚拟货币、指数和超过400个美国股票。而且公司会提供的 support 有每周至少2次的线上课程、Telegram 信号群、每日市场分析，还有6月开始，我们会有著名的市场分析师兼 YouTuber 开用为你和你的客户提供线上直播，为你现场分析市场，现场带单。最重要的是 Forex Capital 是一家成功获得美国期货协会所颁发的 MFA 牌照，让你和你的客户可以安心的把资金投资在这里交易和建立你的 IB 团队。如果你有兴趣了解 VC Forex Capital 的 IB 优惠，近日我们会在柔佛新山有一场 Forex Capital 的线下 IB 招商会。现场我们也会提供红酒给大家，让我们一边品尝红酒，一边讨论如何把你目前的业绩推上更高峰。点击下面的链接，我们会有专人联系你。我们到时见。
你是某某平台的 IB 吗？
我常常听身边的顾客朋友说，做 IB 的都是很轻松的工作，不是去打golf， 就是去和客户喝茶，就能赚到可高达5位数的收入了。
我只想说，你只看到了一部分的事实。我认识的一些 IB， 他们的平台都没有提供很多的 support 给他们的自家 IB， 有时被客户问到 signal 或市场分析，他们还要去其他平台买 signal 提供给客户。
而我能够把我 IB 的业绩一直保持并持续成长，选择一个能帮助你发挥的平台，绝对是最重要的决定。毕竟选择比努力重要。在 VC Forex Capital， 你和你的客户可以交易到的产品有外汇、贵金属如黄金、原油、虚拟货币、指数和超过400个美国股票。而且公司会提供的 support 有每周至少2次的线上课程、Telegram 信号群、每日市场分析，还有6月开始，我们会有著名的市场分析师兼 YouTuber 开用为你和你的客户提供线上直播，为你现场分析市场，现场带单。最重要的是 Forex Capital 是一家成功获得美国期货协会所颁发的 MFA 牌照，让你和你的客户可以安心的把资金投资在这里交易和建立你的 IB 团队。如果你有兴趣了解 VC Forex Capital 的 IB 优惠，近日我们会在柔佛新山有一场 Forex Capital 的线下 IB 招商会。现场我们也会提供红酒给大家，让我们一边品尝红酒，一边讨论如何把你目前的业绩推上更高峰。点击下面的链接，我们会有专人联系你。我们到时见。
All right, good evening. Okay, we'll get started for today's session over here. And of course, we gotten some of your feedback for the past two sessions as well. Okay, so we'll be implementing those at the same time, right? One of the feedback was I think my explanation or when I was sharing, the speed was a little bit faster. So some of you might not be able to catch it, exactly the whole picture I wanted to portray. So for today, we'll go a little bit slower, and hopefully you'll be able to pick up as much as possible and follow along as we do our market analysis. Okay, so great. We'll get started by usually what I do, right? Whenever I look at the market, I like to look at it from an overview picture. Okay, so same thing today. We're gonna look at it from an overview perspective. What's happening this week? What are some of the things you need to take note of? And then we're gonna drill down into the technical analysis, where we're gonna scout for opportunities that you want to focus for the week. Okay. So let's start off by looking at the overview of the calendar over here first. Okay, this is important because if you are trading, especially the FX market, okay, you want to take note of what are some of the events that might affect volatility, okay, and what you need to take note of, right? Because, for example, this week is going to be crucial because we have the FOMC and the Fed funds rate coming in on Thursday midnight. This is based in Malaysia timing. And of course, if you're trading, this is important because it's dollar, right? Basically, you're trading anything. You are also trading dollar. Okay, so that's gonna be very, very important because it's gonna create some kind of volatility. Okay, and of course, if you scroll through to this week here as well, later part on Thursday we have the SMB, which is the Swiss National Bank. I don't personally trade a lot of Swiss franc. Okay, but of course, if you're trading Swiss franc, you need to take note of this because it's again a very major impact news. Okay, and of course we have the Bank of England later part on Thursday as well. And if you're trading, GBP, then of course that's going to be very important. Okay, so I think this week the main focus here is going to be FOMC, Fed funds rate, which is the dollar. Is going to impact basically everything you're going to trade in the financial market, including stocks, commodities, indices. Okay, and then we do have SMB. So for those of you who are more focused on Swiss CHF, okay, then you need to take note of that. And of course on Thursday we have Bank of England. Okay, so happen our Thursday sharing is gonna be 8:30 p.m., which is gonna be after all this event has taken place. So what I'm gonna do for today's session is I'm gonna share with you a little bit on this here as well. Okay, in terms of like what is my personal view on some of these events here, and then of course in relation to the currency, what are some of the opportunities you want to take note of. Okay, I'm not sure how many of you actually joined in last Thursday sharing, okay, where we talk about the news aspect of trading, right? In particularly is the CAD, okay, and I shared with you one of the opportunity, if I remember correctly, is dollar Canadian. Okay, and we talk about on Thursday we share, right, how dollar Canadian can be a potential trade to ride on for news trading. Okay, and we did specifically also mention that a good data does not mean that Canadian will strengthen and vice versa, right? A bad data doesn't mean that Canadian cannot strengthen. Okay, so in this case here you can see the data came in, okay, quite positive, but for those of you who took the dollar CAD trade, I think right now it's running very, very nicely. Okay, in a moment we'll take a look into the technical chart as well. Okay, and then I'm gonna share with you, of course, the tips here on how you want to manage the trade if you're actually in it. Okay, and this management of trade is also very important. Okay, because it's not only this particular trade, but basically every trade you take, you need to manage it. Okay, if you remember, we mentioned about analysis process, execution methodology, which is your strategy. Then you have the management process as well, right? Okay, so I hope that helps. So with that, let's go into the chart for the week. Okay, now first thing here, I will talk about the overall market, which will look at the S&P indices for now, and then we'll look at the dollar index, and then we break down into the individual currencies. Okay, so for S&P, this is on a daily chart. What you want to be focusing on is that last Friday, we have the S&P, of course, very bearish move, and it broke the May low. Okay, so this is quite significant. Now, if you take a look at that, since the start of the year 2022, this is actually the December, right? This part here is December 2021, and since 2022, we're in a down year. Okay, it's not surprising, because if you understand, when inflation is high, central banks are tightening, are hiking rate, usually it's not going to be good for equities. Okay, and since late last year, we have been expecting to see kind of like a pullback, correction, and the general understanding is equities and stock market is not going to be good. Okay, so this is not surprising. Now, the question over here is, a lot of people would ask, like, is it time to buy or invest for the long run in terms of stocks or CFDs or indices? Okay, the answer to that is nobody will know. Okay, I always say, as traders, no one will know for certain or 100% what exactly is going to happen. But what we can do is to analyze based on our method, and most importantly is, whatever method you use, you need to have that high probability of getting it right. And of course, overall, you need to be profitable, right? I think that's the most important aspect. So for me, how am I looking at the overall equities market for now? Okay, maybe before we dive into that, I also like to drop you guys a little bit of a tips over here. I'm not sure how many of you heard of this term or are familiar with this thing called intermarket analysis. Okay? So as the term suggests, intermarket analysis is basically when we look at the financial market, we look at it from, not just like equities itself, okay? Because in the whole financial market, everything is linked. Okay? Generally, the financial market can be broken down into equities. Some of you might know it as stocks. We have the commodities market. Okay, of course, commonly these are like your gold, silver. If you want to be specific, we can even break it down into hard commodities and soft commodities. Soft commodities are like your sugar, wheat, orange juice, etc. Coffee, right, etc. But for today, we just lump it as commodities. Okay, you have your bonds market. Okay, and of course, you have your currency market. And lately, of course, we have the crypto market. Yeah. Okay, so if you take a look at the financial market, these are like big categories. So why is this important is because you need to understand this ties in with the principle of what we call money flow. Okay, which means that there is kind of like a fixed money supply in the financial market. Okay, and what this means is that when money flows out of a certain asset, it needs to go somewhere. Okay, so the idea is, if you take a look at equities, right? So equities market is coming down. What does it mean? It means that the money is flowing out of equities. Okay, so if you look back at the intermarket analysis and the concept of money flow, okay, if equities is flowing out, okay, this money that comes out from the equities market needs to go somewhere. So understanding here the study of intermarket analysis is to understand if we are in a high inflation environment, central bank is hiking rate, is tightening, money is flowing out of equities, where will it go? Okay, so in this case here, you can see recently, of course, crypto is also flowing out, right? So that gives us, remaining of commodities, bonds, and currency. Of course, that's where the money is flowing in. Okay, so when you understand this major perspective, it helps you as a trader to position yourself well as well. Especially if today you're only focusing on buy opportunity. Okay, so for example, like some traders, when they look at stocks, they don't want to sell. Okay, because short sell is a quite complicated process in the equities market. So they only focus on buy, right? So in this year alone, probably not a good environment to buy into stocks. So if you want to buy, if you only adopt a buy strategy, then where will you go to, right? You go into commodities, bond, currencies, these other markets. Okay, so I hope this little explanation here give you an idea of what I mean by intermarket analysis. Okay, so coming back to equity, to the S&P, the general overall market. Okay, one way to take a look at it is that we have this little channel over here. Okay, now is it gonna give us some kind of support at the bottom of this channel for rebound? We need to see. Okay, perhaps we give it a couple of more days, especially today and tomorrow, and when the Fed announces the rate statement and its press conference, we want to see by then if we can see a bounce on equities. Okay, now if the market is not able to hold this and it continues falling, then it's going to be more aggressive because it's going to break through this level, and money is going to keep flowing out of equities. Okay, and back to that intermarket analysis, where will money flow? Okay, it will go into commodities, bonds, currency market. So that's why you realize that this year FX market is not too bad, it's quite easy. Okay, but equities is tough. Okay, yeah. So let me drop in the FIPS over here. Okay, so they can take a look at it as well. Currently we're testing that 100% and 123.6. So this level needs to hold. Okay, when I mean level, of course, it's not precisely there, but basically around this zone, it needs to hold, which means it needs to show some sign of bouncing. If it doesn't, okay, then very high chance we're gonna see equities market continue to sell off, and it can be quite aggressive to the downside, right? To zoom out a little bit, the next area over here would likely come back towards this zone. Okay, so be prepared, right? For those of you who are invested in equities, have that in mind. Now, when we talk about intermarket analysis, there is this unique special relationship as well. Okay, equities versus dollar, or I would say CHF and JPY. Okay, more specifically, these three currencies versus Aussie and Kiwi. Okay, so there is this intermarket relationship where we talk about S&P general stock market versus the dollar or Japanese yen, okay, versus the Aussie. Now there's a name to that. Okay, the dollar, Swiss yen, and Japanese yen, we call it the safe haven currencies. Okay, and the Aussie, Kiwi, we call it, okay, the risk currencies. Okay, now what's the relationship? Okay, the relationship over here is that when equities drop, generally these three currencies would rally, the safe haven would rally, and your risk currencies will drop as well. Okay, and when equities rally, then naturally this tree tends to drop and the risk currency tends to rally. Okay, so that's a little bit of the relationship. It's not going to be 100% all the time, but you can actually take note of it. Okay? So over here, when you see S&P falling, okay, generally what it means is that the yen would strengthen, right? The dollar would strengthen. So if you take a look at some of the currency pairs later, you realize that the dollar has been strengthening since last Thursday, Friday. Same to the Japanese yen, okay, and your risk currency will weaken, right? So Aussie and Kiwi tends to weaken as well, right? And some of these are moving accordingly as we are speaking right now as well. Okay, so I hope so far so good you guys are catching on all these things. Okay, so with that, let's take a look at the dollar index. Okay, I'll zoom in a little bit on the 4-hour time frame. So you can see since last Thursday and Friday, the dollar has been strengthening quite a bit. Okay, so again, that relationship, as I mentioned, as equities drop, dollar tends to strengthen. And of course, traders are basically pricing in the Fed is going to hike rate. Okay, again, this Thursday. Now, one thing to take note from a technical perspective is we are retesting this psychological number 105. And this is crucial, right? Because this is the previous high in May, and we're retesting it. Now, a little tip for you guys here as well, especially on a technical analysis perspective. Right? I always say don't buy or sell. Basically, you don't want to immediately trade when the market is testing this, you always ask the question of how the market is developing. Okay. Now it's important to focus right now on the dollar because we are at the key zone, but that does not mean immediately go and sell it or buy it. Okay. You want to see how is it developing, what is the pattern. Okay. And over here from Elliott wave perspective, there are generally 3 types of possibility that it can develop into. Okay. The first one is basically it does a strong rejection. So it goes up, it comes back down, right? We call this a V-shaped formation. Now, if this is a V-shaped formation, okay, you might want to focus on sell after that because it's a strong rejection. Okay, I'll give you an example of what is V-shaped rejection. If you take a look at the pound yen, okay, look at where it is, previous high, rejection, right? This is what we call a V-shaped rejection. We'll talk a little bit about it later on. Okay, now the second possibility over here, okay, is that the market starts to do what we call a crawl pattern, something like that. Okay, now when this develops, you want to focus on the sell side as well. Okay, so this is the second possibility. Okay, again, these are patterns that tends to repeat itself over and over again, and then all you really need to do is just capitalize on that opportunity. Okay, so this is another one. To show you one example we have is on dollar yen earlier. Okay, take a look at this over here. Okay, previously we have this significant low, right? And then how does it breaks at this zone? It breaks as a crawl. Okay, very slow. Okay, so same thing, this is the pattern that I'm talking about, and then what happens? It goes, right? So back to dollar index, the idea over here is that if it does something like that, then you expect downside. Okay, not too difficult, yeah? Now the third possibility is that what it can do is that it can break through, does a consolidation above it. Okay, now if this is gonna happen, then there's a good chance this will continue to the upside. All right, so as a trader, what you really need to do is, as the market approaches a significant high or significant low, or what we call key levels, you want to pay very close attention to that. Okay, and you just want to wait and see which of the possibility it is developing, and then from there you want to trade accordingly based on the direction itself. Okay, so right now for DXY this week, what's the outlook, what's the view? We wait. Okay, we wait and see what is it gonna develop over here. Okay, maybe by Thursday when we come back in, we might have a pattern that I'll be able to share a little bit more in terms of more concrete direction. Okay, in terms of whether you want to buy into the dollar or sell into the dollar. Okay, so I hope that helps. Okay, now because of this reason, most of the major pairs we might not get an opportunity now. We might need to wait until Thursday FOMC. So over here I'll skip through some of these major pairs. Not much, but I just want to come back to dollar Canadian, which we talked about it last Thursday. Okay, where we cover news trading. I hope you guys who join in still remember. We'll talk about how personally I don't like to be sitting in front of the computer and then monitoring the trade all the time. But what I like to do is I put in pending orders, right? Trades that wait to be triggered. And last Thursday, we shared with you an opportunity where we can look for a breakout to the upside. Okay, and initially what we wanted to do is we wanted to ride on the Canadian data, right? The data comes in very positive, which is supposed to be good for Canadian, but you do realize that dollar CAD actually went up, which is relatively the CAD is weaker than the dollar. Okay, so that's where I say I don't really trade the news. Like if it's green, I buy that currency. I don't do that. Okay? I use the news as what we call catalysts. Okay, so this is something that we explained last Thursday as well. News kind of create that kind of movement, the volatility, for us to enjoy that benefit of it, right? So if you take a look at it, with this kind of move up, okay, that's what we call volatility. Okay, so for those of you who managed to capitalize on this good for you as well. Congrats, right? You need to manage that trade. Okay, so over here I give you some tip as well. If you still remember, we talk about analysis, process. Okay, then you have your execution, methodology, right? And of course, what you need also is a management technique. Okay, so I hope you can see that process through since last Tuesday, since Thursday, and then today as well, right? So we start off our process always as an analysis, right? We look at this chart, we say, okay, from an Elliott wave perspective, there's a good chance this will be ending here, and there's a good chance we'll go up, right? That's the analysis. And the execution is what? The execution for me is I use a breakout entry technique with a stop below it. That's risk management. And of course, we're looking at like upside target. Okay. So today, once you have your analysis, when you have the trade running, the next step, of course, is the management of it. Okay. So management process over here for me is quite straightforward. Okay. Now, if you're running in solid profits, what you want to do is quickly, of course, the first step is to shift stops to break even, so that your trade will never lose money anymore. Okay. Now, after that, okay, so in this case here, the trade has run off quite a bit, right? So somewhere around 2630. Right now we are running at 2930. That's about 300 pips. You wouldn't want to leave your stop at break even. Okay, you want to do what we call trailing stop loss, which means you want to protect your profit. So how I do it is quite straightforward. Okay, I like to look at where are the next significant high and low. So you can see over here, this is quite a significant low. Okay, over here as well. And then of course, recently we have this low here as well. Okay, so of course, depending on how aggressive you are and of course, which management technique you use, you can then start to shift your stop loss slightly higher, and then just keep following the market to protect as much profit as you can. Okay, so this is where you need to also look at it in terms of your strategy. To be a complete strategy, you need these three things. Okay, so for me, that's how I'm gonna shift and stops and put it there. Good. Yeah, so I hope this trade here or this case study here can give you a little bit of what I meant by analysis process, execution methodology, and management technique. Okay, yeah. Good. So for this week, I'm focusing a little bit on the yens, right? So we have dollar yen and euro yen, and of course the euro odd and Eurocad and pound kiwi, right? A little bit of a cross, and then after that we'll look at gold. Okay, so let's look at the dollar yen first. Okay, now dollar yen, if I show you on a daily time frame, we are definitely in a very strong momentum to the upside, right? The trend is no doubt upside. Okay. However, if I were to pull in a little bit of the RSI over here, okay, on the daily chart, right, it's very obvious that we have a momentum drop, okay, which is what we call divergence. Okay. Price went up, but RSI did not break new high. So this usually indicates a potential reversal soon, and therefore I would look out for any sell opportunity on the dollar yen. Okay, so now a little bit of the thought process over here, right? So from a technical perspective, we have a divergence which tells us for a potential reversal. Okay, and then what I like to also take note of is from a fundamental or what we call risk environment or risk events, right, to be simplified. This week, what do we have? We have the FOMC. Okay, so whenever I kind of have this in mind, right, I want to combine them. Okay, when I mean combine, it's like fundamental and risk events create volatility. Okay, again, catalyst. Okay, and the technical here gives me a sense of direction that I want to focus on. So in this case here, I want to focus on the sell side, right? I want to focus on reversal. What can cause a potential reversal on the dollar yen can be the fundamental or the risk event. Okay, so from this angle over here, we know that the catalyst probably we're gonna come in somewhere around Thursday. So maybe today is only Tuesday, right? Maybe I don't want to put in my order yet, okay? But I can prepare, okay? So what I mean is that on this chart, on this 4-hour scale, right? I start to look at what is the pattern that's developing. This looks a little bit like what we call a crawl or a diagonal. And there's a good chance the market might go up a little bit more, and then from here it can start to come back down. Okay, and maybe by Thursday that's where that reversal is gonna happen, right? So for me, maybe tomorrow. Okay, today's a little bit early because this can still go up first, or maybe make a slightly low and then go up again. So I have another low point here. But the idea for me is I want to look for a breakout trade to the downside. Okay, now based on today, of course, this is the low point that we can look for a breakout. But if let's say the market puts in a slightly higher low and then it starts to go higher like this, then my entry point would then become this low. Okay, my stop loss will be wherever high that the market has established. And of course, my management technique is if this starts to really go down, I will then just trail my stops and protect that trade. Okay, so I hope that helps in terms of a potential trade idea on the dollar yen for the week. Okay, so do keep an eye on that. I think there's a high probability we might get it. However, if the market just decides to break through above very strong, okay, as what we call an impulse, then that's it, right? I'll not be interested in selling it already, because if the momentum is up, there's no reason to sell it. Okay, so I hope that's clear. Okay, so that's on dollar yen. Do keep an eye on that. We also have the euro yen. Okay, now this week, euro yen I think is worth monitoring, because if you take a look at it, from this high we have what we call a V-shaped rejection. Okay, so that's a very strong rejection, right? It's basically a V. If you go to a higher time frame, it's actually a pin bar. Okay, it's actually a pin bar. Okay, so on the 4-hour time frame, this week on euro yen, okay, couple of ways you can trade it, right? Again, depending on strategy over here. The common one here you can use is fibs, maybe from a swing high to the swing low. Okay, you can take note of the 50 and the 618 Fibonacci. So the idea is if the market does retrace back towards the zone, you can look out for a sell opportunity to the downside. Okay, alternatively, for those of you who are familiar with Elliott wave, you want to wait for a 3-wave pullback. Okay, very specific is a flag, which will come out probably around that 50 to 618 anyway. Okay, so that's the idea on euro yen. On the higher time frame, okay, you want to be cautious though, is that the sell might not be a major reversal, right? Really depends on how the market develop over here. But one perspective to look out for is this. Okay, let me go back to the 4-hour time frame. Okay, one perspective you can look out for is if the market really decides to go up a little bit and then starts to move lower. One of the target you want to look out for is at the bottom of this trend line. Okay, where is this trend line? If you go to the daily time frame, we are basically connecting this low, and then that's the trend line. Obviously, the drop might not be so strong. It might take some time. So these are what we call swing trade. Okay, you might also want to have like TP1, TP2, TP3. You can definitely do that. Okay, so I would say if I drop you some level here, you want to keep an eye on about 14180. That's your potential entry. Your stop will be above 144.25. Okay, your TP1 can be somewhere around 132.70. Okay, so in terms of like risk reward ratio, is definitely worthwhile, right? The TP1 gives you about 3.5. If you want to go for extended target, maybe somewhere at the bottom of the channel, then it gives you quite a significant about 1 is to close to 6. So keep an eye on Euro Yen. I think this week might be worth keeping an eye and potential trade set up here as well. Okay. Another one is Euro Australia for the week. Going to daily first, you can see over here Euro Australia kind of had a little bit of a bottomish formation, and the market seems to be reversing soon. Okay, zooming in a little bit, you might even see this as a head and shoulder pattern or inverse head and shoulder pattern, right? And of course, this is the neckline, right? So definitely worthwhile to be putting into your book to look for buy opportunities. Okay, and from an Elliott wave perspective, okay, we have this pattern over here, very neat. Okay, so we have a strong push, 3-wave pullback, very nice rejection up. Okay, at the moment, the market has already broken through this top of the channel. Okay, very strongly as well. That's a good sign, which means the momentum is definitely there. Okay. So the perspective right now on Euro Australia for the week is this. Okay, you want to wait for a little bit of a pullback. Okay, ideally a 3-wave pullback. Okay, maybe this might happen by Thursday or something like that. Okay, and from there you look for buy opportunity. Okay, so this 3-wave pullback, if you pull in the fit from a swing low to the swing high, it might come down. Might not go to 50. Maybe about the 382. Okay, something like that. Then somewhere around this zone will be a good opportunity to look for a buy. So Euro Aut, the area here is somewhere around 5020. Okay, if you're looking to enter somewhere around 5020, your stop, you might want to put it just below the 618. Okay, a very conservative stop, of course, will be somewhere around 4755, which is this low here. But if let's say today you enter at 5020, if you put your stop here, it's a little bit wide. Okay, so my suggestion is if you're looking to enter somewhere at this zone, your stop loss just place somewhere below here. Okay, now target. Okay, take profit. How far can this go? Now the first level, I think you want to keep an eye on is somewhere around that zone. Okay, 5365 TP1. If this level is able to break, then you want to look up for the next target, which is the significant high here. Okay, the risk reward, if you're gonna look all the way to the top, is huge. Okay, and again, what is the reason or the potential catalyst that can push the Euro Aut? Okay, you still remember just now we talked about Aussie versus equities, right? So if the general equities is gonna keep falling, okay, which is not good for the stock market, then what will happen to the Aussie? The Aussie would likely drop as well. Okay, the Aussie would likely weaken because of the risk, right? And if Aussie is weakened, then Euro Aut has a good opportunity of keep going higher as well, right? Because Euro and Aussie, if Aussie drops relatively to Euro, okay, this pair price will go up. So that's one of the potential catalysts you can keep an eye on, okay, which is if general equities market is going to keep falling, then Aussie would likely weaken and you might get an opportunity in Euro Aut for the upside. Okay, I hope so far so good. Another one here I'm looking at is Eurocad. Now why I'm looking at Eurocad is because we are right now testing a significant low. Okay, this is a daily time frame. You can see over here April this year one time, this is in May another time, and this is June, okay, which is quite recent. 3 times haven't been able to broken, right? So what this suggests is we have a good chance of market going back, maybe just about this high. Sufficient profit. If he's able to break through, you go higher. better. Okay, so Eurocad is definitely worth monitoring. Now going down to the lower time frame on the forward. Okay, is this a buy? No. Okay, so what's a buy pattern? Okay, I always talk about pattern, right? I want you guys to take away this little tip. Okay, focus on pattern, right? Focus on pattern. Okay, why? Because it tends to repeat itself over and over again. Now, what is a buy setup pattern? This. Okay, of course, it can come in various shapes and sizes, but they look similar. You want to look for something like that. Now, for those of you who are familiar, this is called a bull flag, right? Basically, if you join two channel, it looks like that. Now, every time you see this is a buy setup. It tells you that there's a high probability market will continue to the upside. Okay. So for me, if I want to buy into Euro Canadian, I need to see something like that. Right? Straightforward, right? So I want to see something like that. Okay. So you can see, right? This one here play out very nice. We see something like that. What happened next? It goes up. Okay. Clear, simple. So same thing over here. If you see something like that, there's a good chance this will go up. Okay. This pattern, of course, can also happen a little bit bottom here. Like, so it might take some time, right? Really depends on how the market develops. This might come back down, you know, and then it starts to go like that, like that. We still can look for a buy. Basically, familiarize yourself with this pattern. Okay. So when you see a pattern like that, that's your buy setup. Okay, that's your buy setup. Now, another buy pattern is what we call a crawl, right? So what is a crawl? A crawl looks something like that. Okay, so if this comes down like that, you know, you start to see a pattern that looks like that. Okay, this is what we call a crawl. Okay, so this pattern here is also a buy pattern. Okay, it's also a buy pattern. Okay, this one here I think you guys are familiar with, right? If you take a look at dollar CAD, okay, this is the buy pattern. If you take a look at dollar yen, just now I showed you earlier today, this is the buy pattern. Okay, so same thing over here in Eurocad. You know, if you see a pattern like that, that's the buy pattern. Okay, again, it's not 100%. It's not gonna work all the time, but it's gonna work more than enough for you to make money. Okay, as long as you manage your risk well. Okay, so good. I hope that helps. Eurocad, right? It's another one to keep an eye on. And last one here in terms of FX, I have is Pound New Zealand. Okay, Pound New Zealand is more of a shorter term trade. Not something that I often look at in terms of H1, but for those of you who are interested in shorter term, this is a potential setup. Okay, so you see this, right? You get a very strong move, you get a sideways move. There's a good possibility this will continue and retest the bottom. Okay. So for those of you interested more in a shorter term, a Pound New Zealand is one of them that you can keep an eye on the 1 hour chart. Okay, one way to look out for it is of course sell stop. Okay, maybe I'll need to be a little bit, take this away first. To be precise on that, this level is somewhere around here. Okay, that will put you around 9310, and your stop can be above this high, right? So that will be 9455. Okay, not a very decent risk to reward ratio. I think it's about 1:1. Yeah, it's just about 1:1, right? It's fine. You know, but of course you need to see if it fits into your style, right? Can the market fall below this? The answer is obviously yes, right? I mean, we need to of course keep That's why management, right? We need to see how the market develop from there, and if there's a possibility of going all the way back down. But right now, what I see here in the 1 hour chart, for those of you interested, is this setup, right? You have an impulse, you have a correction, you expect another move down. Okay, this is definitely short term, okay, 1 hour time frame. Okay, yeah, so that's on the FX side of things. Other than those that I mentioned, the rest isn't really giving us a lot of opportunity, not the best. So I would primarily focus on those that I mentioned just now. Okay, let's take a look at gold. Okay, gold as of last Thursday we cover was this. Okay, it did went up, but you know, not really a lot. And then after that it does a reversal, right? Okay, so this is again why management of trade is important. Okay, because if you enter somewhere here, you do not want to have a profitable trade turn into a losing trade. Okay, the least you can do is to get out and break even. Okay, that's important. Yeah, if you manage it along the way, maybe some of you might even catch TP1 or etc, right? But the idea is the least you can do is to break even. Okay, so for gold, what's next? Now you need to update your analysis from time to time as the market continues to develop and show you a little bit more information and data. Okay, so for now, how do I look at gold? Okay, so first thing off, if I were to remove this, we have this channel, or I would say trend line over here. Okay, not the perfect one. Okay, there's a little bit of a poke through here, but more or less roughly that zone. Okay, so we have that. Back to the 4 hour time frame, we have this significant low. Okay, so looking at last Friday momentum, which is this, there's a good chance we'll see a little bit of pullback and the continuation to downside and retest this. So that level would be somewhere around 1786. There's a good chance we're gonna see gold continue falling towards this. Whether here is gonna break through or it's gonna reverse, we need to see how it develops. Okay, but for now, short term, I think you want to be holding on to a little bit on a bearish view for gold towards 1786. Now if you go down to maybe like 30-minute, 1 hour time frame for those of you who are interested. Okay, I don't really trade the short term, but for those of you who are keen, this is a potential setup you can keep an eye on if it fits your strategy. Okay, so from Elliott wave perspective, it's gonna be this. So somewhere around 101.23.6, if this were to retrace higher, you can look for a sell opportunity towards 1786 over here, and your stop loss will be above the 1618. So let me put that in here. Your entry will be somewhere around 1840, right? Your stop will be at 1855, and your target will be somewhere around 1786. Okay, so it's gonna look something like that. 1786 is here. Okay, so we're gonna give you about 1:3.5. Not too bad. Okay, so it looks like that. Okay, so go. Those of you who are interested, short-term play something similar like this. Okay, but of course you need to take note of is that if the market starts to go up very strong, you might not want to trade it anymore, right? So you need to kind of monitor it, because if you want short term, you need to monitor the market a little bit more often. Good. Okay. Hope that helps. Okay, for gold, those of you are interested, you can keep an eye on that. Okay, yeah. Crude oil. Okay, crude oil is a little bit volatile right now, and it's not the best pair to be looking at the moment. Okay, but we do have this little high over here, 124.40. So we might get, a potential kind of double top formation over here. We need to see how the market develops, but for now, I don't think you want to pay too much attention to crude oil yet. Okay, so we'll leave this aside. S&P, we talked about it at the start already. And over here, let's take a look at Bitcoin. Okay, so crypto market has been falling, right? If you're invested in Bitcoin, quite a bit of you should be panicking right now. Okay, it kind of broke through this major support level, and it's going down fast, right? So where is the next level? Okay, somewhere here, which is a lot, right? 176.30. Okay, let me clean up all this irrelevant now. Okay, if you are looking at crypto in general, my advice is be very, very careful. It's very volatile. Can this entire crypto asset goes to zero? The answer is yes. Okay, because Bitcoin or even crypto at this moment doesn't really have a tangible use in society, right? Yes, you can say like, we have like NFT and things like that. But again, those are very, very speculative asset. Okay, and it's what we call greatest fool theory, right? NFT itself is just like Pokemon cards. Okay, you buy low today in the hope that you can sell off at a higher price in the future. Okay, and the only way it can sell off at a higher price in the future is that if someone is willing to pay you a higher price in expectation that they can also get a higher price in the future. Okay, so this is what we call the greatest fool theory. Crypto right now, NFT right now is like that. Okay, so when the whole thing collapses, it can collapse very fast, right? Which means like it can literally just go to zero, like Luna. Okay, so if you're trading onto all this, just be very, very careful, and never risk, any money that you can't afford to lose in crypto market. So with all that said, there's a good possibility we can see Bitcoin continue dropping towards 176.30. Okay, there's a very, very high possibility that will happen. If you're interested in trading it, okay, my suggestion is you want to wait for a pullback first before you sell it. Okay. So if you pull from swing high to swing low, somewhere around that 50 and 382, you can get a very nice confluence at the previous support as well, right? So wait for a pullback. If this is going to develop like that, this again is a sell pattern. You can look for a sell opportunity with a target, as I mentioned just now. Okay, so Bitcoin remain bearish for now. Okay, for those of you interested to trade. So this week, okay, Bitcoin and gold will remain bearish for the short term. Okay, Pound New Zealand short term, those of you interested, bearish. Okay, Eurocad will focus on the buy opportunity. Euro Aussie, we are focusing on a buy opportunity. Okay, Euro Yen, Dollar Yen, we'll focus on the potential sell. Okay, with dollar yen specifically, I think if I were to choose one opportunity this week, I will keep a very close watch on dollar yen. Okay, I think of all the setup, dollar yen is one of the cleanest and clearest opportunity within this week. Okay, hope that helps. Good. Any question from you guys? Today I don't see a lot of questions coming in. Any question from you guys? All good. Okay, don't see any question. Hey, one question: UJ versus GJ. Is it still UJ better, right? So let's take a look at that. Yes. Okay, this is actually quite a good comparison. Okay, pound yen has already started moving down. Okay, and if you take a look at pound yen, if you want to sell it, you need to wait for this, right? Which is basically a consolidation, and then you sell it. Okay, back to this low. I would say both are good. Okay, both are good. The thing here is for pound yen to develop a setup, because today is Tuesday night, right? For pound yen to set up, we can wait until Thursday. Okay, I think by Thursday sharing session, if we're gonna get a sale set up, this development will come in on Thursday, right? Which I'll talk about it when it comes. But dollar yen, it might happen tomorrow or maybe later tonight. Okay, because if you take a look at this pattern here, it's almost ready to go. It can go tonight, it can take off tomorrow. Okay, I won't know, right? No traders will know. So that's why I say right now for today's session, you want to focus on this first. Okay, but pound yen is also good, right? Just that pound yen, we have more time to wait for it to develop. Okay, so yeah, I hope that answers your question, right? We can definitely still, when the setup comes on pound yen, it's a good setup, right? It's a setup that's definitely worth taking. But for today, dollar yen might take off first. Okay, so this is a little bit more like time sensitive. Pound yen, you can still wait a little bit more. Right, so I hope that helps. What is the 1, 2, 3 as you always mention? I think you're referring to the fibs, right? The fibs over here is actually this ratio 123.6. The idea of this is basically just a fib measurement. Some traders use 127.2. Is more or less the same in terms of the area. Okay, I use this mainly just to create kind of like a zone, right? So within this zone, there's a good chance the market will react. Okay, so it's just basically a fit, right? Fit is a calculation. Okay, so the idea of this is if I go to go, okay, so you can see over here, right? We have that 101.23. Okay, so 100% is basically if we take this low to this high, okay, and we duplicate that move to here. Okay, so you can see, right? Equal leg, 100%. Let me remove that, right? 100% is the equal move of this. Okay, so this one here is the same. So 123.6 is basically an additional 23%. Okay, so that's what it basically means from a Fibonacci perspective. Okay, So I usually use this, right, as a zone. So if you're interested, you can follow. Okay, 101 to 3.6. Okay. What is the correlation between dollar and oil and dollar and gold? Okay. Dollar versus gold, or oil. The relationship on this is actually not that significant. Okay, but of course you need to know, right? When you are trading gold XAU, you're trading it against the dollar. Okay, when you're trading crude oil, you're trading against the dollar. Oh, this WTI. Okay, so what that means, right, is if you need to understand pairing, right? Pairing here means if this side, okay, the gold and the oil don't move, they flat, okay, nothing is moving them. Dollar would affect the price of XAU USD and WTI USD. I hope you understand that. Okay. Similarly, if the dollar don't move, dollar remains flat. Okay, then if gold prices goes up, your XAU USD would also go up. Okay, and similar thing happening in oil WTI. Okay, so the relationship between dollar and gold and oil is basically just this trading relationship, right? Because they are in a pair, so there has that relationship there. But it does not mean that if dollar goes up, gold will come down. No, not necessary. Okay, dollar can go up and gold can also go up. Now, if that happens, if both goes up, what happened to your pairing XAU USD? It will go flat. Okay, so that's why sometimes if you take a look at the gold chart XAU USD, okay, why sometimes it can be flat. Okay, like for example, why on this scale, why is this flat? Okay, it's because gold strengthened, dollar strengthened, both about the same. XAU USD goes flat. Okay, so I hope you can understand that relationship, right, between gold and dollar. They don't have a direct relationship. Okay, however, if you talk about over here, one of you is asking, right, between Canadian and crude oil, yes, that would have an impact. Okay, so that's what we call commodity dollars, right? So if you talk about this, we have oil versus CAD. I would say precious metal is to Aussie, and then of course we have milk, daily goods product towards NZD. Okay, so we call this market correlation. The idea is if the commodities go up, generally the currency goes up. Okay, not all the time, generally only. Okay, because if you take a look at oil and CAD, okay, right now, take a look at oil. Okay, daily chart. What's oil chart doing right now, right? At least for the short term, from here to here, oil is going up. Generally, that means Canadian will likely strengthen. Okay, but you also need to factor in, if you look at dollar CAD, you have the dollar playing out as well. Okay, so you look at dollar CAD, you do realize that this pair is going up, which means Canadian is weakening. Okay, then you might say, hey, but that's not true. Okay, but you need to understand, number one, correlation is not 100%. Okay, sometimes they move together, sometimes they don't. They have a relationship there. Next, point two. Okay, when you look at currency, always think in pairing. Okay, because CAD can be weakening or strengthening at the same time. Dollar is also moving. Okay, so my suggestion, my advice over here is always trade and look at the chart as it is. Okay, so if you trade dollar CAD, look at dollar CAD chart as it is. Okay, don't go and confuse yourself like, oh, dollar CAD, I'm buying it, but you know, oil here says the otherwise. Okay, then you get very confusing. Whenever you trade, just focus on the chart that you're looking, but then use your understanding of market correlation to manage your risk. Okay, so that's how I do it. Now, if today, for example, I'm buying dollar CAD, okay, this means I'm actually selling the Canadian, right? Okay, because I buy dollar CAD means, in other words, I'm selling the CAD. Okay, so if I'm selling the CAD, this means that I'm essentially also selling crude oil. Okay, because they have a relationship there. Now, how do I manage my risk here is that if today I want to trade oil, okay, and the chart tells me that I can sell oil, I need to then take note. Okay, I already sell the Canadian. If I'm gonna sell oil again, there are two positions in the same direction. Then, if something goes against me, I might lose two positions at the same time. Okay, so from that angle, I need to manage my risk. Maybe I go smaller. Maybe I don't trade oil. Okay, so use market correlation as your risk management, but don't confuse it, you know, through your trading and analysis process. Okay, so that's what I do, and that's what I would suggest you to do as well. Okay, so I hope that helps. Yeah. Cool. Okay. One more question over here. Is dollar gonna go strong after FOMC? Very hard to say. Okay, as I mentioned, right? Right now, on the technical point of view, we don't have enough clue. Okay. But do keep track of the dollar index. Okay. How? I think I mentioned just now, but I'll briefly mention again. If this comes down slow, like that, there's a good chance we'll see upside. Okay, so before FOMC, you can actually take a look at the dollar index chart, see what pattern is it developing, right? This is one. Okay, the other possibility is a V shape. If that's the case, likelihood is continued downside. Third, if this do a crawl, let me draw nicer, like that. Okay, so similar to like dollar yen, right? If it does a crawl, the probability of the downside is higher. Okay, so moving closer towards FOMC, you want to see what's the pattern, what is the dollar index doing. Okay, it's a little bit difficult to project now because we don't have a lot of information. Okay, that's gonna happen on Wednesday night, right? So yeah, I mean, by Thursday when we come in on Thursday sharing, FOMC is already done. We're definitely gonna talk a little bit about that. Okay, but I just want to highlight today, you know, this is the projection that we can do. This is the prep work we can have. But depending on how it's gonna develop by today and tomorrow, then we need that kind of information. Good, yeah. Okay, good. We'll review back on the dollar definitely on Thursday. Okay, and we're gonna talk a little bit more into the FOMC as well once it's released. I might take some time to share with you guys how to read into the statement. Okay, which is quite important if you really want to understand that as well, right? Like for example, May 1 is here, right? So I'll share with you guys on Thursday sharing how to kind of decipher this. What does the statement means? What do you need to take note of moving forward, you know, every time a statement is released. Okay, so we'll talk a little bit more into that on Thursday. Good, cool. So I hope today's session here is helpful. Okay, it gives you a little bit of insights, a little bit of potential trades to keep an eye on. More specifically, I think it's the dollar yen. There are some others as well as we mentioned, but my primary focus is definitely on the dollar yen. Okay, so good. That's all from me for today. All the best for those of you trading, and I'll see you guys on Thursday. Okay, so see you guys then. Bye bye.